Hey, my name's Jordan. I'm a recovering narcissist. This is my amazing, beautiful, wonderful partner, Kira, the empathic princess that she is. We have walked an amazing path of healing together where we've both healed the wounds that caused the empathic, narcissistic
Death spiral.
death spiral of pain. And today we're answering a question from our community that is about how the pervasive acts of a narcissist can really affect the partner of a narcissist. These are little things like remembering how to do certain things that your partner's been asking you, and they can create so much pain in the partner, and the narcissist themselves can feel extremely confused about why they keep doing it and how to even fix it. So we're going to cover resentment, we're going to cover shame, we're going to cover some really awesome topics. We hope you enjoy it. So let's dive in. All right, babe. So the next question from our community is, what did it take to recognize the impact that the narcissist, aka me, behaviors have on you?
I think what's interesting is that I noticed an impact pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like at the beginning of our relationship, I just had like a low-grade anxiety all the time.
Yeah.
And I think what's hard about that is that for me personally, it was like being a fish in water and having somebody ask you, how's that water? Or when did you realize you were in water? Mm-hmm. I've always been in water, so to speak. So that feeling of anxiety in a relationship was really familiar for me.
Yeah.
And so it didn't trigger anything in my brain to say, red flag, mayday, mayday, this is, you don't want to feel this way. You don't want to feel anxious. So I think it would be interesting to have each person who's a loved one of a narcissist reflect on that same question. Mm-hmm. When did you start to notice the impact of the behaviors? I think that for me, the very first indication was immediate, just the general sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
And I actually remember us having this conversation because I remember bringing up, there's this guy that I was talking to, and he would just text me good morning every morning and good night every night. And I never felt anxiety with him. I just felt secure. And you were like, well, hey, I can do that. I can text you every morning and night, and hopefully that'll help. And I thought that was cute, but I think it was me actually trying to communicate my constant, all-pervasive feeling of anxiety in the relationship.
Yeah, because the narcissist is just stuck in themselves. I think they make a lot of people in their life feel that way. Every partner of mine is, eventually I kind of came to realize I was making everyone feel this way. And because we're just stuck in our own heads, it's like we'll connect, we'll hang out, and you'll be like, so how's your day? And I'll tell you everything, and then won't ask it back, won't check in to see how you are. It's just, they're very stuck in their own world.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was my first feeling or inclination of how the behaviors were impacting me. But as time went on, I would say that the next biggest emotion besides general anxiety and insecurity was that I started to feel a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because I didn't understand the resentment that I felt. I remember that you did this really cute thing for Valentine's Day one year. And we said, hey, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a really cute night. We're going to talk about how much we love each other and plan our future together and plan our wedding and all of these cute things. And we got in there and I just felt pissed. And you did like all these rose petals and the candle, and like you went out of your way to be cute.
Yeah.
It's not like I had a good reason to feel resentful in that moment, because I thought, well, you're being really nice right now, so why do I feel so angry at you?
Sure.
And I just had the feeling for the first time that I needed to explore that feeling of anger.
Yeah.
Because I had started to feel that anger percolating months prior to that, but had just continued to shove it down and just say, well, I'm feeling mad because I must just be a mad, angry person.
Sure.
I must be the problem. And
Typical empathic response.
so I was like, I just guess that I'm an angry person and I need to work on my anger. I should take this to therapy and figure it out.
Sure.
So that resentment just started to build and build and build to the point where I really felt that sparkle between us go away for me, where I remember you'd say little comments like, you seem less obsessed with me than usual. And I was like, no, I'm totally obsessed with you. But like deep down, I could really feel that there was real resentment there.
Yeah.
So going back to this moment on Valentine's Day, I remember sitting in this meditative state, trying to get myself to open my heart. I was trying to force myself to open my heart. I was like, it's Valentine's Day. I got to open my heart to you. What's my problem?
Yeah.
And I was just forcing and trying to force it. And I just felt the stubbornness of my heart was like, fuck nah. Yeah. I'm not opening my heart for nothing, just like, no. And I remember being so frustrated at myself for feeling this resentment because I wanted to appreciate the moment, but I couldn't escape that feeling anymore. And so that really started me on this path of unpacking my resentment. And it began with me just believing I'm a horrible person because I have all this resentment. I didn't even realize it was because of our relationship or your behaviors. I was just thinking that I had a problem.
Yeah.
And as I started to go deeper and deeper into it, because I'm an energy healer, I do a lot of body work and somatic work on myself. And so I'm sitting in these energy healing sessions with myself, just feeling into my body. And in every part of my body, I'm feeling resentment. Specifically resentment towards Jordan.
Yeah.
And so I would try to journal it all out. And as I was journaling and having these dialogues and conversations with myself, I started to notice when I would unpack my day, all of the moments where an action that you would do would trigger this feeling of resentment.
Yeah.
Right? So it'd be, and I felt so ridiculous writing it down because I thought if anybody ever read this, when my posterity reads this, they're going to think I'm so dramatic.
Yeah. Over
the dumbest things.
The milk, the pushing in your chair, the whatever, right?
Exactly. And that's a great example. It's like he never pushes in his chair. I'm constantly following him, cleaning up after him all day, pushing in his chair, throwing away his soda pop can, putting his shoes away, even though I've asked him to do these things hundreds of times. He never listens, and I'm still doing it. He's blasting the music while I'm trying to meditate or study without a care in the world.
Yeah.
He drops the kids on me last minute, and I have to adjust all my plans to accommodate. Thing after thing after thing. And the hard thing would be I started to notice we'd get in these conflicts because I would suddenly, without my own permission, react at something you would do resentfully.
Yeah.
Which would obviously cause not a good response from you. So I would say something like, well, I'm not your nanny. You have to get a babysitter.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was like I got to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And so you're like, wow, I'm so loving to you and you're the worst. Why won't you help me?
Yeah, totally.
But you didn't know that, the 100 times prior to that where I felt like the kids were just dropped on my lap.
Sure.
Or you didn't clean up after yourself at every meal. Those had built up.
Yeah.
And so when I'm saying, how could you do this thing? And it seems so small to you, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts because I'm now feeling the impact of 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000 tiny actions that cause me to feel completely disrespected or completely ignored or that you were not even aware of my existence.
Yeah.
And so what was hard at this point was that I found myself in this like very stuck place where it felt like my feet were in cement and you were like 10 feet away from me being like, come here, babe, let's be close and connected. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I called off our wedding, which is another really interesting thing is I was like, I'm not marrying you.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm just pissed.
Yeah.
And the hard thing is, family and friends, they're all like, what's her problem?
Sure.
Because nobody understood our dynamic. And
it's hard to say, well, he doesn't push in his chair and he doesn't, do all these little things. You feel like a psycho, but
right. He doesn't listen to me, or we fight too much. Or,
yeah. But I think this is why, like, partners of narcissists can feel so frustrated with the whole situation, because it's like, it's all like a well that taps into this deeper thing, which is, I'm not being cared for. They're not aware of me and my needs. I'm basically out here alone on the savannah, but with like a ghost next to me that is not actually, doesn't have any teeth, can't actually do anything for me, to help me feel safe and all the things a partner should do. Right.
Yeah, I actually want to speak to another comment that was brought up in the community group that I think really well connects to this topic that we're talking about. Mm. So we have someone in the group that commented that she had asked her narcissistic partner to do something really simple for her. She had asked him to flag down the mailman so that he didn't leave without the package that she'd been waiting for.
Yeah.
And her partner felt resistance to that and wasn't able to do the thing she had asked. And her emotional response to his lack of response to her request was so overpowering. And she really expressed how she feels like he didn't even have the breath to offer her to whistle.
Yeah, such a simple request.
And it was almost a poetic way of explaining how I think a lot of partners of narcissists end up feeling over a long time. You get, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the road, and maybe, sure, in a healthy relationship, your partner not responding to your request might be kind of like, that was annoying, please do better. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, or
sure,
I don't know why I overlooked that. And it's okay. But if you've been a partner to a narcissist and your requests for support, connection, and like being seen and acknowledged have been denied and rejected hundreds or thousands of times, it feels extremely traumatizing.
Yeah.
And so
it's like every one of those mistakes, every one of those issues are just flaring up right now.
Exactly. It's not just the one event that's getting triggered. It's a well of 100 or 1,000 events where you felt this exact same way you're wearing them all on this giant backpack on your back.
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming that you're carrying all of the anger and resentment of all of those moments. And I think this brings up the question, how do we get out of this situation?
Yeah.
Right? Because what I've seen with the couples that we've worked with is that the narcissists can come to this point of awareness where they're like, okay, I get it. I'm a narcissist and I need to change.
Or have some problem, even if they don't know it's narcissism. They
right.
might
Maybe
be aware
have
of
anger
a problem.
problems
Sure.
or ADHD or, you've coined some other issue.
Yeah.
And they're working their asses off to improve, and they're starting to celebrate themselves. Mm-hmm. Look how good I'm doing. And even their partners are like, well, it's been a lot better this week. And then something one like event like that, and they're like, I'm done. I'm out. Yeah. I don't want to do this anymore. And maybe you can explain this more in depth because you have a deeper understanding, but how does their narcissistic partner feel at this point, experiencing that resentment?
Well, this just came up in our last support group of, for one guy, it was, I always don't do the laundry correctly, these little nuances that she wants. Another guy, it was, I damage the packages as I bring them into the house. And it's these little things that your partner has requested them to do, but they just can't do right. That happened to me all the time. And I thought that I was just ADHD. I was like, well, it's my ADHD. I can't be expected to do this right. And I just kept blaming it on that because it's the only thing that made sense to me. I didn't know. And the narcissists themselves are really perplexed and frustrated at themselves. Like, why the fuck can I not remember to just fold it right, like, or pick that up correctly? And what it really stems from is that narcissists deep down have this fear of unlovability. It's like this big, dark, gross thing. And that's why all of their narcissism even exists to begin with, is that they are trying to not look at it. It's like a narcissist is scared of their own reflection. And so they're all of narcissism is trying to avoid ever looking at that. So these visions of grandeur, these delusions, and, all of it. And so when somebody says, hey, you messed up, you didn't take that out right, you didn't fold the laundry correctly. What a normal person, when they experience guilt, does is go, oh, I see that I made you feel bad. That makes me feel bad. I'm not going to do it. And the brain goes, don't do that again, because they feel the pain that they need to. What happens to a narcissist is they do one of two things. Either they deflect it and go, well, you did this, how could I be expected? I have ADHD, like come up with the deflection. And so it never penetrates to their heart, and they never, resave it in their brain of how they need to do things. Let me turn that off so we never hear that again. Sorry. The other thing that they can do is that they do let it in, but it's such an intense feeling of shame that they just think to themselves, I'm the worst. Guilt is a positive. It's a constructive thing. It gets you to not do it again. Shame is destructive. It causes you to think, I am the worst. And instead of saying, oh, my partner wants me to fold this correctly, I will do that so that she feels loved, they spiral into, I'm the worst person in the world. How could anyone want to be with me? I'm a monster. And they go too deep on how they're the worst, not how that action made the person I love not feel good. So narcissists are kind of in this sticky spot where they never are allowing it in the right way, because they either deflect it completely or they dive into shame. And so something that we've done to all the narcissists out there, or people who are wanting to make this change, is, as I've learned this, I have to lean into what I caused for you. Don't get stuck in shame, and just save it in my brain. So the other day we were at the gym and I was in the sauna. You texted me, said, hey, is it time to go? I said, yeah, give me 5 minutes. But then I got out of the sauna and I was just covered in sweat, and I went and changed my clothes. It ended up being 15 minutes, which those last 10 minutes when you're waiting to leave are the longest, right? So you're waiting for me. I got to you and you were frustrated. You're like, hey, what the heck? And I very logical, very intentionally was okay, don't spiral. You're not the worst human in the world. You're just a human. And don't deflect or get defensive. Just let this in. And I just leaned into that feeling of when you're waiting to go somewhere, and it's and you think they're just around the corner, just how annoying that is and how painful that is. I just leaned into it and tried to feel it. And what I've noticed is that when I do that action, my brain just does what the normal human brain does, to save and be conscientious of their partner. Now, I think there's probably other elements that are there, shame around certain topics. There's other things that can muddy the waters a little bit, but that's a pretty high level, explanation of why this occurs all the time.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds like what you're saying is the antidote to getting stuck in the trap of being self-focused in response to the pain or frustration of a loved one. The antidote for that for a narcissist is to learn how to sit with the discomfort of causing someone else pain.
Yeah.
And learn how to navigate the shame that comes up.
Yeah. Without flying off the cliff into shame, but staying in just that healthy guilt,
I think I would love you to go into this a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is kind of a beautiful companion to the original question, which
mm-hmm.
was, how do narcissistic behaviors impact you?
Mm-hmm.
I think that how do narcissistic behaviors impact the narcissist as well? Because I think it creates this dynamic of shame in the narcissist and resentment in the loved one.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get stuck in this death spiral of shame and resentment. And that's hard to get out of. So I'd love to share more thoughts about the resentment piece, but since we're already here, can you maybe take 5 or so minutes to explain to narcissists and their loved ones how a narcissist might sit with and confront this shame? Because I think just saying, don't go there.
Just don't. You know that thing you've been doing your whole life?
Hey, have you ever just tried not doing it? It's that's like a boomer telling me to not be depressed. Have you ever just tried not? Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, I'll just not do it. I'll just push it down. It's not really a skill that most people have. Yeah. So
It's
if
really
you could
hard.
take a minute to maybe explain some high level, and I know that you're, writing a book and a journal and some other things that are going to be tools for people to use in the future for, doing these
Sure.
processes with themselves. But anyway, I'm over explaining now. Please
Yeah.
tell us how to do it.
Well, it's hard to fit it all in, but I think that becoming aware of what shame feels like in your body is probably the first thing. And then then from there, you can become aware of, okay, this thing's coming in. Oh, there's the shame. It's wanting to suck me into the black hole of this endless, shame spot. Let me just, sit with it. And there's a lot of components of learning to love yourself and like being okay with mistakes. There's something a lot of narcissists really struggle with. It's like they're either like the best thing in the world or they're the worst thing in the world. And after they've woken up to their narcissism, they spend a lot of time in this. I'm actually the worst thing in the world. I think that you can sit and do like affirmations and hugs and all those things that might sound good, but you don't actually get into the healing until you just accept in those moments of shame. It's like, start small, start with the little mess ups. Like I was late to the gym, and try to hold yourself in that. I like to tell narcissists that your anger can act like a metal detector for where you carry shame. And so if you notice that you're getting angry about something, maybe get curious instead, peel back a few layers, and then you might realize, oh, I actually just feel ashamed. And then, okay, let me just hold myself in that shame. It's okay. I'm okay. And it's super hard for a narcissist to do. I had to do it this morning. This morning, I thought we were all going somewhere together. We had all the kids. We're getting out for school. And I thought you were upstairs. And I was like, babe, let's go, babe. And I was like, what's she doing? She's taking forever. And we're all just kind of waiting. It's getting late. And I look outside and you've been waiting for me. You'd already texted me, said, hey, I'm in the car. I'm ready to go. And I was like, ah. So then I was a little bit like tiffed at the boys because one of them didn't have their shoes on. And he's like, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay, dude. I actually just felt stupid. I felt shame for being an idiot that I had missed this. And so it's not your fault. And we were driving and I was still a little bit worked up and I just had to it's okay. Mistakes are okay. It's fine. Just breathe through it. Deep breaths, a little bit of movement, a little bit of hugging. Those things work.
I think what's really beautiful too is that for people who are maybe not as far along on this journey as you are, an old version of you might have gotten very reactive at me, right?
Yeah.
You
would have been
You would have been reactive at the boys. Like, it's your fault that you're dumb because your shoes aren't on. And then you get in the car and it's, well, why didn't you tell me? And it's your fault. And, that's a good example of how those deeper feelings of shame and sensitivity can show up as anger, attack, deflective, and blame shifting.
Yeah.
And so what you're basically saying is those are some examples of how shame might manifest for people who don't know what shame feels like in their body.
Yeah.
It's kind of that prickly, like, I hate myself feeling. It's like that. You said anger can be a presenting emotion that's masking shame. So even if you're feeling overly angry about something, sitting with the anger long enough to get to the deeper layer, which
what is this really?
I'm feeling ashamed about what's happening.
Yeah.
And being with it long enough to move through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
honestly, it takes
key.
so much work. It's like, it just takes a long time. And like, shame is just elusive. Like, to the narcissist, you use the example of a fish in water. And if you ask a fish, how's the water? They say, what's water? They're in it. They've been in it their whole life.
Shame.
Yeah. Narcissists have been in the shame for so long, it's hard to even notice it. And it takes a lot of work to kind of get your way out of it.
Yeah.
So
I love that you said that. Thank you for letting me get in there a little deeper.
Yeah.
I think how this relates to this resentment that loved ones can create is that there comes a point where you're becoming more self-aware. You're starting to notice the shame that you feel. You're starting to feel shame every single time you make a mistake. But instead of me being capable of giving you the compassion and patience that maybe you would need in that moment, I'm just furious.
Yeah.
And that's a hard moment. That's a hard moment, right? Because you're like,
Yeah.
every other time I would have been pissed at you, but now I'm not. I'm trying to be in those more vulnerable emotions of
Yeah.
feeling shame, feeling my unlovability and my unworthiness that's perpetuated my narcissistic behaviors. And yet the loved one is just, it's too late, too little too late,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so this is something that I want to talk about because I think that it's a really hard line because loved ones of narcissists have abandoned themselves and given so much that there starts to be this internal thought form that sounds a little something like, you don't deserve my compassion anymore.
Yeah.
I've already empathized with you on this 100 times and you're not getting better.
Yeah.
I've already done this. I've given too much. I'm not going to give any more. I cannot give any more. And I think what's hard here is that, the Gottmans, who run the Gottman Institute for relationships, they talk a lot about relationship dynamics. And they said that contempt, which is similar to resentment, I think, synonymous, is one of the signs that your relationship's going totally downhill.
Yeah, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember when I was starting to feel that resentment, I was like, well, I guess our relationship is over. And I've noticed that in our groups, there's a lot of loved ones that are stuck in this place. And so that's why I wanted to take some time to validate that that is a part of the process.
Yeah.
And I would say that I have spent a good year or more feeling resentful. And I started to walk myself out of that resentment. But how that was possible was basically through reversing the cycle of abuse that I had allowed to happen to myself, which means that I started advocating for myself. I stopped abandoning myself, and I really started to prioritize my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I think that when you start to become aware of resentment, that's part of the process, because if you stop ignoring your feelings and stuffing them down, then the very first emotion you're going to feel when you start to check in with your body is going to be resentment, and a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I think that one important thing to realize is that that resentment can't just be ignored or brushed over. It has to be fully unpacked. Like I was saying, that backpack full of hurts and wounds over years of all of the unmet needs, you almost have to set that backpack down and take everything out of the backpack and give space for it.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds exhausting, and I don't mean you literally have to look at every single event that's happened, but you at least have to unpack the themes. And what I mean by that is if there's a theme of you not listening when I'm expressing myself, we have to address the wounds and the hurts of that theme.
Yeah.
Right? And whether that gets addressed in the relationship directly, which I think feels impossible when the narcissist is still dealing with a lot of shame because he or she will be reactive. That's where it becomes essential that the loved one commits to her path of healing, his or her path of healing, which looks like unpacking your resentment and not doing it for the narcissist, doing it for you. Because carrying a backpack of resentment everywhere you go is miserable.
Yeah.
And that's where I had the shift of, okay, I've had anxiety this whole time. I felt insecure this whole time. And now I'm feeling resentful and I feel like I hate you. And I remember saying that to you. I just feel like I hate you right now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can feel towards you in this moment.
Yeah.
And those are really hard moments in our relationship. Really hard. I think that, that's where you can start to see that the narcissistic behaviors have hurt you so much that you're edging on irreversible.
Yeah.
If you don't take charge. So the reason why I bring that up is because if you ever want to repair, the longer you allow resentments to brew, the harder it is going to be to unpack it.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's where I decided I'm taking my power back. I'm looking at every single thing that makes me feel resentful, and I'm going to heal that situation. I'm going to change that dynamic, first in myself and then in my relationship. And I'm going to do that by communicating my authentic feelings vulnerably, setting strong boundaries, and protecting my peace by not engaging in dynamics that feel harmful. Not from a resentful place, like I'm getting back at you, like not saying I'm not going to have sex with you because I resent you and I'm trying to hurt you back.
Sure.
But you don't have access to my body if you lie to me about what you're doing on a Friday night.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you access to me out of love for myself. Because if I engage with you, I resent you and I don't love myself. I have low self-esteem because I've allowed myself to go into an unsafe place and be vulnerable there.
Totally.
So I think really what you're seeing is that narcissists and their loved ones generally create a codependency with each other, right? And so part of this healing is that you individualize, where narcissists take accountability for their shame and unlovability and reactions and behaviors, and then loved ones start to take accountability for their self-abandonment, lack of strong boundaries, and resentment. And you actually stop doing that together.
Yeah.
It's actually a work you do with yourself.
Yes.
And if you're doing that in tandem, then you can actually come together as two whole individuals who are working on your stuff. And, you know, if you have a reaction and you fall back into an old pattern, instead of my resentment blowing up and me just saying, I hate you, I'm done with you, I'm out of here, I can look at it more objectively because I know, okay, I can still feel a reaction inside. And I do sometimes. I mean, today we had one. You know, I started to feel all this fear and anxiety and resentment come up from an old wound. But what we're able to do is objectively look at each other and say, I see your behavior and I see my resentment. And my resentment's mine, and I'm going to go work on that. And your behavior is yours, and I need you to go work on that. Totally. And we'll come back at the end of that self-work and see if we can re-engage from a place of deeper sovereignty and autonomy. Because the truth is that as far as how narcissistic behavior impacts you, you can't control how a narcissist behaves and how long it takes them to heal. But you can take the reins back over your own personal emotional sovereignty and getting strong and resilient within yourself. So that you can, at the very least, not personalize their behavior and not project your resentment. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're spot on with all of it. And I think it's hard sometimes for narcissists who are like, they're starting to see their progress. Like, okay, I woke up, I've been doing this, like, I feel all this progress and I'm so much better. And then we experience this, and I've seen others that we coach get into this, where they run into a mistake and, you know, the partner's super angry. The narcissist feels like just this desire to just shame spiral or get angry. It's like, I've been doing so much, look at me. But, you know, my thought for the narcissist in those moments is, you've created so much pain. The most loving thing you can do for your partner is to be patient and be willing to take those lumps and just be humble in those moments and wait for them to get the healing that they need, you know? And it can feel so hard because it's so much work unraveling your narcissism. It really is. And you want to be seen in it because you want to be seen in everything, but you have to realize it's work that you're doing for yourself. And because you want to have a more peaceful life, not so that your partner sees you in that, you know, so.
Totally. And honestly, I think that one of the most helpful things that you would say to me as a loved one is, you'd say it over and over, it's okay that you feel so resentful right now. You have a right to feel the way you do. And I'm going to be here with you until we figure this out. Because that was so healing to hear that for the first time ever, my needs matter. It's not about your discomfort around how I'm feeling. It's not about making you feel better about my resentment. It's about, for the first time ever, hey, how you feel is okay and is the priority. And I will wait for you to move through this. I did this to you. And just hearing that from your mouth, that level of accountability in so many ways was at the root of my healing as well. And I think that's where you can help heal each other too, is for any narcissist listening to this, underneath your angry, resentful loved ones, maybe judgments or criticisms is a really soft, squishy, sad little bean,
Yeah.
that's just like, you hurt me too many times and
Yeah.
now I'm angry.
Or calloused. It's been so many times I've got all these guards up that are just like, it's going to take a while to peel those back off.
Yeah. So if I could give a word track to narcissists, it would be, instead of justifying your actions or saying, well, at least I'm better than I used to be, or I didn't mean to, or that's not that big of a deal. Why are you being so sensitive about this little thing? I think having you say something like, after you've sat with the shame and moved through it and you feel in a good place, say something like, it's okay that you feel this way. And I'm willing to hold space for your resentment towards me. And I hope and trust we can get through this together with time. I'm going to prove to you that you can trust me. I'm going to prove to you with time that we're going to get better. And I do think that's helpful.
Yeah. And one thing that really opens the door to get there, because I struggle to get there a lot of times. Like I could kind of mentally get there, but I think emotionally what gets you to the point where you can just allow your partner as much as they need is to like look in the mirror and accept the monster that's there. Accept all the pain that you've created, which is the hardest thing in the world to a person who holds this deep-seated feeling of unlovability, all the shame around who they are as a person, to look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I have caused so much pain. I really have. And I'm still okay." Like the fact that I'm on this path to healing is all that matters. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm working on being better. And once you can finally accept all of that, then you can allow your partner, like from an emotional level, just like, because we could tell a whole bunch of people right now, hey, go do this. And when you're over there, when their partner's over there angry and feeling away, they're like, oh, like I'm like, it still eats them up inside to feel like they're the bad guy. It eats them up inside to even imagine that they're the villain. But that's what narcissism is. It's this whole protective shield bubble of delusion and blame shifting, all these things trying to protect them from actually just getting in and accepting their mistakes, their humanness, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So just a little hack for everyone out there. Cool.
Well, yeah, I think to come full circle there with this question of, what are the impacts of the behaviors? How can you tell? When can you tell? I think it's probably different for everybody, but those are some good maybe road signs for you to look at and say, am I feeling anxious? Okay. Am I feeling insecure? Am I starting to feel resentful? And understanding that those stages of the relationship are building upon each other, and that it can continue to get more and more toxic of a dynamic if it continues. And so whenever possible, it's like the saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
And instead of lashing yourself for, we should have worked on this forever ago, or why did we even allow this to happen? And why has this happened? I think sometimes the best thing we can do is say, I'm going to make the decision right now, today, that I want to create a new reality for myself. And hopefully these can be some good warning signs. You can check in with your body. If those are coming up, try and put some of these tools to practice and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe you can make a little bit of progress in your situation, or at the very least, start working on healing yourself. And I think, as always, the last message I always want to leave with people is just to remember that this is a work of love. And I believe that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And we can get really in our heads and really mental about, all the strategies and the tools and why it happens. But really what it comes down to is, if you're watching these videos and you're resonating with their message, it might be that you on some level believe in the healing power of love and what it can do for you and for your relationship. And so when you're doing the work of love, this is always an invitation to return to yourself, to reconnect to your own heart, and to tenderly care for all of the broken parts that are inside there and hold them lovingly. And trust that deep connection that you have to the ultimate source of love the divine, God, the simulation, whatever you want to call it. And trust that connection, because ultimately that love that's the guiding force that's leading us is what creates that healing. So I always want to leave people with that message to remind them that this is not just a mental process, it's a heart process. It's a process of opening the heart to ourselves and our own pain, and to each other and each other's pain. So
Yeah. And I'll end with just saying, like, massive kudos to everybody who, if you're watching this video, then you are walking down a path of healing and you're willing to do things that I think a lot of people aren't. And everyone wants to say that healing is sparkly and rainbows. It's pain. It's so painful to do those things, to stand up for yourself, extremely painful for the partner of a loved one, to lean into your shame, extremely painful for a narcissist. Just like, pat yourselves on the back. I love seeing people who are willing to walk this path, and it's totally worth it on the other side. So we love you guys. If you have a question, we go ahead and drop it in the comments below. And we are also answering questions inside of our community. This question from today came from our community. So jump in there, and you can meet other people who are also on this healing path, and we can hopefully all heal together. So thanks for coming by.